Everyone's talking about AI tools, game engines, and shortcuts to become a game developer in 2025, but none of it actually matters if you're still learning the wrong way. I'm not a pro studio dev, but I've spent years learning the wrong way, and I'll show you what actually makes sense if you want to improve this year. So the first thing I want to tell you if you want to improve your game development skills and maybe finally release your first game is to not get stuck in tutorials. Like, I've spent years stuck in this what we call tutorial hell, which is where you have tutorial as your main learning resource. And the reason why you fall into this is not because you're stupid, like, it's not your fault, but the reason is just you've been fed a wrong belief about learning. Like, you've been fed the lie that tutorials are like the best way to learn, the only way to learn, and so on and so on. But tutorials, they don't teach you understanding, they teach you recognition. Like, these two things might sound the same, but they are actually two completely different things. You can imagine if I watched, like, I sat here on my desk with no piano at all. Just an example. I had no piano. I watched a 2-hour video on how to play the piano. Not practicing myself, not doing anything. I just watched the video. I'd like recognize a lot of the things, like, okay, this is this note, or this is how I play this is how I do this. Like, I'd feel like I'd understand everything, and like if I had a piano in front of me, I'd play like an awesome song because I watched this video about how to play like a cool song on the piano. But if I actually sat down on the piano, if you actually watch a tutorial and you sat down in your own game engine and you try to implement the things that you just watched, you aren't going to be able to do it. This is what happened to me countless of times. I'd watch a tutorial and think, well, now I know how to do this, now I know how to do that. I basically know everything about how to make my own game. But then I go into my game engine and I try to make like a movement system, first script in the entire game. I can't even do it. And why is that? Well, it's because I watched tutorials. What I learned was recognition. I didn't learn understanding. And understanding, that only comes from experimenting, building projects, making mistakes, and getting better at solving problems. You can imagine, to get better at painting, what do you need to do? Are you going to watch a video about painting, or are you going to paint? Which one do you think is going to be 10 times more effective than the other? Well, obviously, if you want to get better at painting, you paint. If you want to get better at making meals, like cooking, what you're going to do? Well, you're going to cook. If you want to get better at making music, are you going to make music, or are you going to read a book? Well, you're going to make music. It's plain and simple. To do something, we need to get better at the thing. So to get better at game development, what do you have to do? Well, we have to make games. That's the only way we like go from like learning to recognize something to actually learning to understand something. And learning to understand something, that's where we can actually use the things in our own game. Like, if I understood how to make a movement system, I'd be able to make a movement system without watching a tutorial, asking ChatGPT, daddy, how do I make a movement system? Blah, blah, blah. Like, if I understood something truly, I'd be able to do it myself. And that's not what tutorials is going to teach you. Like, this has been researched. I know this myself. You probably know this too. That tutorials, it feels very productive when you're like following along on your own screen. You feel like you actually learn a lot of things, but you don't. And that has been researched. Like, when you're watching things passively, you feel like you are more productive and you're going to remember more things than you actually do. It's not like your mistake. This is just a wrong belief about learning that's very common on YouTube. But I'm telling you now, the only way to actually get better is to actually build something. But like, don't have Brackeys as your main learning resource. Like, oh, now I want to learn Unity. I want to learn how to do this one thing. And then the first thing you do is go on YouTube and you search for a Code Monkey or Brackeys tutorial. That's not how you're going to learn, seriously. But chances are, like, you don't know how to do much yet, and you probably like might not have even started. The only thing you have done is like watch a few tutorials. So I'm going to teach you how you're going to start learning. Like, just assuming that you are a complete beginner, this is the step-by-step guide on how to start learning. So the first thing I wanted to do is you're going to watch a 2-hour introduction video to your game engine. So that's where you like basically want to recognize the basic things. Like, you want to recognize like where do I make a script? How do I like write in the IDE, whatever, like very basic things. Just get familiar with your game engine, install the game engine, connect your IDE. Just these very basic things so you're not like completely clueless before we start making games. What you wanted to do after you get like a very basic overview about like the game engine, you know where to like spawn a game object, these very basic things. When you know how to do that, I want you to immediately start experimenting. It can be in code at this stage, it doesn't even need to be in code. It can just be to like add a component, like what does the rigid body do? What does the character controller do? Like, doesn't do much without code, but whatever it might be. What does these different components do? I just wanted to experiment, mess around, like guess, see the result, and then adjust. I wanted to just do a lot of experiments and try to have like a lot of goals to do small things. Like a very good goal in the start is to just do a very simple experiment. Like for example, click a button and then change its color, for example. Very simple things. That's like 3 lines of code or whatever. That's like a very good example of a beginner experiment that I wanted to do. So for example, after you watch a 2-hour like introduction video, you might remember like 1 or 2 things that might be relevant to this. So you try to guess like, so first to change the color, the first thing I need to do is obviously like register when I click the button. And how do I do that? Well, I remember there was this one thing that was an event, and then you click the plus, and then you see you can connect like a script. And then you see the menu and like just that, just try to guess, try to figure things out yourself. Like don't be afraid to not be held in your hand and to actually like struggle with problems and not just get the solution immediately. When things are hard, that's just an indicator that you're finally learning, or you are actually learning if you're like a complete beginner. And then after you made some experiments, I wanted to start combining these experiments and then make prototypes. So these are going to be like small playable experiences. So for example, it might be like a movement system. That's like a prototype where you can like move the player. It might be like a trampoline, very simple, but whatever. Small prototypes, small experiences that you can actually show like it does something. Like an example of experiment that I might do is like a teleport system, like a very simple jumping mobile game, things like that, very simple things. And I want these prototypes to be relevant to the games that you want to make. So if you want to make like a 2D Sudoku game, focus on the UI, focus on like the math, logic, whatever. I've never made a Sudoku game before. Or in contrast, if you want to make a 3D game, don't focus on the Sudoku elements, the UI. Focus on essential things for a 3D game, like movement in 3D, 3D physics, 3D movement, 3D animations. Focus on those things because those are the things that are most relevant to your goals. And in game development, you can do tens of millions of different things. Whatever you can do so many different things in game development, so you need to just scope it down to whatever you want to make in the future, the game developer that you want to be. And if you just want to remove all of the overwhelm, instead of just watching videos after videos of mine, and you just want the entire process of beginning game development to actually releasing your first game within only 60 days, everything laid out step by step, then Smartini is a solution. So you can click the first link in the description if you just want to remove all of the overwhelm. So there are probably going to be times where you're going to get stuck, and I'm just going to tell you, because this is very essential, when are we actually going to seek the solution externally instead of like struggling with it? Like we can't struggle with like changing the color for 3 hours. We need to have like a deadline. Like if I'm not going to do it within X amount of time, then I'm going to get the solution. What I found is that around 15 minutes in the beginning, around 15 minutes of experimenting, struggling, like guessing, testing, trying to figure it out yourself, that's the sweet spot. So if you can't do it within 15 minutes, then you can use not chat, not a tutorial, you can use Google. You can Google the solution and you can find like official documentation. Preferably don't read the like Google AI solution. I try to find a very dry, like a discussion documentation, very dry solution. Because as I said a little before, when things are hard, you're going to remember it much better. So instead of asking chat and then just copy and paste in the code, or basically back to square one with tutorial hell, you're going to instead try to get the solution via documentation or discussions, where it doesn't like tell you copy and paste this code. Instead, it's going to tell you like the solution, and you need to figure out how to implement it into your own game. So it's going to be harder, you're going to remember it better if you just do it this way. And then just use tutorials for like overviews, new concepts, or when you're like stuck on a problem that you really want to like understand better, and you are taking notes and actually implementing active learning and stuff. So that's awesome. After you made a few prototypes, the last thing that you need to do is just make prototypes until you know roughly 80% of the things that you need to make your first game. So if your first game is going to be a 3D shooter, learn 80% of the things that you need to make a 3D shooter, and then you can start developing your game. And preferably you made so many prototypes and experiments like leading up to that 3D shooter. So you might have like systems like code, models, or just experiences that you can put into this game. So it's going to be much quicker. But if you want to learn like more about the thresholds and like everything that I've learned, all the little details that I've learned throughout my journey, then I'll tell you more inside of Smartini. But the thing I want you to just remember, have building as your main learning resource, and tutorials are only going to supplement that. So to learn game development, you need to build games. That's what I'm going to end the video with. So thank you for watching.